as we've all said many times, is the most anticipated recession in history.
I think we've all been talking about recession. So we got a leading economic indicator chart, which again combines a few different things, kind of shows you, where sentiment is and how things may move based on several different factors, which I'll show in a second. And as you can see, it's further into negative territory. And you can see by the shaded regions there that those are previous recessions. So when you start getting that blue line there moving, well into the negative, which it is approaching now, that's when you start to hit a recession. But like we've talked about before, recession isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's part of a market cycle. It doesn't mean that the world's imploding. It's something that we go through, and there's direction and magnitude. So while we may have a recession, like Chris has just alluded to, that the Fed is obviously driving this direction. They definitely don't want a prolonged deep recession, but they also need to bring inflation down and get some things under control and kind of start a new cycle.
Well, and you said too, there's a lot of things that factor into a recession. A lot of times the market is a leading indicator. And so we've shown the slide, I believe, at least on the monthly market matters, if not a previous roundtable as well, that shows, historically a lot of the downside to the market occurs prior to entering the recession, right? Because especially with this one here, we've talked about it for a year. So they're pretty well forecasted and the market starts to price that in. So usually that pain is experienced prior to. So entering into recession is almost the time where we start to kind of recover from a market standpoint.
For sure. And if you want to put up that leading economic indicator components chart, just to show people what all goes into that number. Again, you can see the stock market's positive, and manufacturers' new orders down there at the very bottom is slightly positive, but pretty much everything else is negative. And again, that's what's driving that blue line to go significantly negative. Doesn't mean, again, these are all guesses. They're all estimations taken from some previous data, from historical data, but it gives you an idea of where things are at and where they're going.
Kyle, you mentioned it though. I mean, I'm interested to see how this will ultimately affect the financial markets, because we have been talking about recession for a year, and the best economists that we follow think that if we do go through recession, and they anticipate we do, it'll probably be towards the end of this year or early part of next year. So as we've all said many times, is the most anticipated recession in history. And so where I wonder is, like, I think I used this analogy last time. It's like we've all seen on the Weather Channel where they've got the hurricane out in the Gulf that's heading towards Florida. If that hurricane was sitting in the Gulf for 18 months and just slowly moving towards Florida an inch a day, by the time it actually gets to Florida, how many people there are like, I forgot to get plywood, Yeah. And so the way that I look at it, we have clients that have made this decision at this point. They're either, I got a diversified portfolio, I don't need the money for a long period of time, I'm just going to ride through this regardless. Or you have other clients that might want to be more conservative and want to remove less risk. But we don't have anyone that by the time we actually figure out there's a recession, they'd be like, okay, now let's get more conservative because I haven't been thinking about this for 18 months. And so it wouldn't surprise me if by the time the recession actually comes and we know that we're in one, most of the people that I know that have wanted to get more conservative, they're not going to start selling at that point. They'll probably start buying. Yeah. And I imagine there's a lot of people in the world that would act the same way. So by the time we actually figure out we're in a recession, which is always backward data, how's the market going to react? And so,
well, I think we talked about it. We talked about it in previous ones as well. Is it's kind of that depth and duration of recession, right? So just because we go into recession doesn't mean everything comes to a halt. It's one of those things. Is it a 2, 3, 4 year recession at negative 4 or 5% GDP, or is it a couple quarters at negative 0.5% or 1% GDP goes
right?
Up? Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of these economists and stuff are leaning more towards that shorter in duration and shorter in depth. It's kind of just we hit a recession and now we're on our way out. And obviously it's data dependent and a lot can change between now and if and when we enter one. But I think nobody's really forecasting a deep, prolonged recession that really just kind of upends things.